This is a bit like going to be part of my series that I've been doing of auto writings, but this was very different. And it's not an auto writing, so you'll have seen by the title of my video, and it's called Milat, the Road to Perdition. Now, who is Milat? For some time, I have been sensing Ivan Milat in my sort of spiritual periphery, and I have been blocking him out. I didn't want to converse with him, didn't want to speak with him, but he just won't go away. He's like a nasty smell. So I'll explain all about him afterwards, and I will explain to you now. I'll start off by telling you what his game plan was. So I could sense him around me. I felt as if he was sitting in the corner of a room in a wheelchair. But he wasn't the old man that he died, the white hair. He was a younger man, but he was in a wheelchair. And I very much got the sense that he was trapped and he couldn't escape, which was a good thing. But there was this sort of quiet rage, and I was really kind of, what the hell do you want? And I'm not going to speak to you. I'm not going to engage with you. And he was absolutely furious. It was sort of like, how dare you? How bloody dare you? And I'm like, I'm not going to speak to you. It's as simple as that. Anyway, I relented and I said to him, if you want to converse, then you've got to do the work. You can't break in to my shell. I always put myself in a titanium shell. It's see-through from my side, but not from his side. So he knows that I'm there, but he can't see me or get me. And my spirit guides protect me as well. So I said, what is it you want? And it's sort of like, you and other channels, and I know exactly which channel he's referring to, which is a channel from Victoria in Australia, a lovely lady called Dolly on Cretin Paranormal. And both she has her daughter, who's a medium as well, and some other mediums that help out on her channel. They've all felt the presence of Milat very recently. So I don't know whether it's a significant date or what the purpose is, but he is an angry little turd. He really is. And as I'm saying this, I'm very aware that he is eavesdropping. He's certainly listening in to what I'm saying. And everything that I have said, I've said to his face. So they kind of blocked him out for a while. They did not want him either. So I said to him, you need to do the work. If you want to engage with people, you have to do the work. You've got to work your way back to the light and find the light. You can't be sitting in your little darkness and expect to converse with the real world. There's been lots of victims. People have been hurt, massively hurt. Their lives have been brought to a halt and a standstill because of his actions. And I said, you're not going to do it. I sort of felt I needed to be a little kinder because I was a bit of an angry man. And I said, you're not going to do it on your own. If you ask your spirit guides, they will help you. They will walk that walk with you, but you have to be genuine. And if you're not genuine and you don't want to go on that path, then you're going to stay where you are. And at that point, he I could see him contemplating me. He was sort of looking at me like this. And I said, I'm not going to give you a voice. I'm not going to give you any kind of platform until you do that work. And if that's 10 years' time or 20 years' time, then I will listen to what you have to say. Wow, God. He was absolutely enraged. He turned around, wheeled his chair off at full pelt, and it's clear he can't see where he's going. He's just going off, and it was just like a big, vast void. And he comes back because he doesn't know where he's at. He's no idea. And then I saw him turn around, look over his shoulder, and I could see this man standing behind him, standing over his shoulder. And for the first time, I saw fear in his face, and he was afraid of that man. Because of the man's position standing behind him, I assumed that that was his father, and I believe it is his father. His father was called Stefan, and he's frightened of his father. And I thought, that's a nice lever. That's a nice little bit of leverage. I also said, you have things that you didn't want your mum to find out either. And I believe his mother is dead as well. His father certainly is. But he wasn't afraid of his mum. I think it was shame that he felt where his mother was concerned, but where his dad was concerned, it was fear. He was afraid. And that basically was the conversation. Like I say, I got the sense that he was absolutely enraged that I should give somebody like George, you may have seen the video I did on George and the Prohibition, that I should give someone like George a platform. Well, George had done the work. He had found his way back. He had sought redemption, and he had done the work to achieve his redemption. It's not just given to you on a plate. You have to do the work. And Milat doesn't understand that. And his ilk, they don't understand it. He's got to do the work. He thinks it's just going to be given out like donuts at a party. So he has some work to do. But what he really wants to say, what he was trying to sort of suggest was, how dare you give a platform to all of these other people? And he was grouping me alongside with what Dolly does. Now, Dolly really does go down the road of seeking help and calm for the victims of people who've gone missing or had the most dreadful things happen to them. Sometimes their murderer comes in, and sometimes she will listen to them. And she's always very, very fair, but she doesn't take any shit from them. And once they've had their 15 minutes, they can do one. And she tells them so. But George was a gentle soul. He knew he'd gone down the wrong path. Milat, there's no kind of recognition that he was wrong in any way. He wanted to be known as the most prolific murderer in Australia. He was dubbed the backpacker murderer. And he's never had that title. I'm the greatest, I am the best. I've had the most, the highest tally. That's what he's aiming for. He thinks it's a football score. He thinks it's a target. And I'm not going to give that to him, apart from the fact he's not actually even on that leaderboard, if such a thing would exist. So that was who has been hanging around, and I hope by doing this video, he will do one and just shove off. He doesn't get a look in. I just shut him out. And this is part of his rage. But for those people who don't know who he is, I'll explain. So Ivan Robert Marco Milat was born in 1944, and he died in 2019, and not a day too soon. He He actually graced us with his presence for far too long. So he came from New South Wales in Australia, and his parents were Stefan and Margaret. Stefan was a Croatian by birth, but Margaret was a naturalised Australian. Now he had 10 brothers and 4 sisters, so he was probably fighting for a recognition of some kind, really. Probably fighting to be heard and to be a little bit more special than his brothers. He had 4 sisters, and it was suggested at one point that he was sleeping with one of his sisters. I deliberately said that because it winds him up, and he is absolutely livid. I can't tell you what he's just called me for saying that. You can imagine, but there's no one there to deny it. And there was a relationship between him and a sister. He was actually operating as a truck driver, and he was running up and down the coast from New South Wales, Sydney area, right up in Queensland. So if you imagine that Australia is a continent and it's the size of Europe. So if somebody is murdered in, for example, Hungary, you're not going to assume that the murderer or the killer lives in France. They're so far apart. And that's what he had the freedom to do, was to be able to drive huge distances, do his dirty deeds, and no one is going to be suspicious of it. He's not going to have any kind of background that people are going to say, we know who he is. It's a massive country. It's a continent. However, he had an MO, which I think he perfected as he went along. They think that he committed his first murder in 1962, which is interesting because he was about 18 years old. Somebody went missing, and given the MO that he produced later in life, they think that that's fairly certain that he would have been responsible for that man. He was actually found guilty of 7 murders, and his murdering spree seemed to start where they were able to prove they had the bodies and prove that it was him. Seemed to start around about 1989 and go up to the early 90s. Clearly, he's not been sitting twiddling his thumbs through the 70s, late 60s and 70s. He'd been committing murders then. He just didn't get caught, and he clearly didn't dispose of the bodies in the same place. His error was to dispose of the bodies in a place called the Belangolo Forest, which is a national park. So he got 7 life sentences, and I'll give you the name. First person was in 1989 was a lady called Deborah Eberis and her boyfriend James Gibson, and they were both 19 years old. They were murdered by him, and their bodies were found in the Belangolo Forest. The next known was in 1991, a lady called Simone Schmidl. She was 20, and I think she was a German lady. And she was found buried in Belangolo Forest. Now, the means which these people died was pretty horrific, and I'll go through that after. But I really want to give name call out to the people who were victims that we know. So also in 1991 was Gabor Neuberger, and he was 21. Anya Habshid, she was 20. They were also murdered. Their bodies were found in Belangolo Forest. Then in 1992, there was Joanne Walters, she was 22. Caroline Clark, she was 20. And that is my connection. If that's backpacker murders, I knew Caroline Clark. She came from Hexham, and a nice, bright, intelligent girl, so I knew her. Now, he has never given any sort of acknowledgement of them, their names, and I wanted to do that. Now, how I see him in his wheelchair is quite remarkable, is with a group of people, like a ring of people, who are linking arms, but they have their back to him. He's in the middle of this ring, and that ring is massive. And in amongst that ring are all these victims. They are the ring. And I don't know how big that ring is, but their bodies haven't all been found. They may have been attributed to other people. He had an MO, and his MO was horrific. He would abduct them. After having given them a lift, he would offer them a lift, hop in the car, I'll take you where you're going. And then he would abduct them, threaten them, use a gun, or stab them. He wasn't about sexual, there was no sexual aspect to his murders. It was the inflicting of pain, and for him, probably a release of huge amounts of aggression, but it was inflicting pain on his victims in the worst possible way. And like I say, it wasn't about rape or sexual conquest. It was overpowering and complete control of their life. You're at his mercy. Do what he liked. And he did. So he shot people. He would then stab them multiple times. Absolutely multiple times. One of his hunting grounds was the Hume Highway that ran right down from Queensland through New South Wales, from New South Wales through into Victoria. And he seeks fame for that. He wants to be known as the most notorious murderer in Australia. Or maybe he did murder lots of people, but he doesn't have that record. There's no proof. The record for that, it's a horrible phrase to use, but the record for the highest tally of murders in Australia belongs to Martin Bryant, and this was in 1996 in Tasmania. It's a place I've been to on a few occasions, to Port Arthur. It's an old convict station where Martin Bryant had an armory of weapons. He lived locally. He's a local boy. He's never ever given a reason for what he did. But he had 35 people that he murdered and 23 that were maimed and injured. And that was I think it was the 28th of April in 1996. It's a terribly, terrible thing to do, but he is the one that holds that record that Milat, now he is buried, cannot surpass unless the bodies come and they can find them and attribute his MO to. So he's stuffed in that respect. A little bit also attached to Milat, Ivan Milat. Sometime later, I think it was I'm going to say it was 2010, his great nephew, called Matthew Milat, and he was 17 years old at the time, and he, under false pretenses, got his friend, David Octoloni, to go out on a journey with him, where he then murdered him. did the most horrendous things. And of all the places he chose to do that was in Belangolo Forest. He was caught because he was thick, like the majority of Milats. Thick, arrogant, stupid, and believe that they are all powerful. But Matthew Milat soon caught, and one of the first things he spouted out was, "I'm a Milat, I'm a Milat." What a complete clown. Absolute clown. Well, my impression that I get from Ivan very much was anger and rage, because he is the famous Milat, not the great nephew. The badges these people went to wear. Incredible. Anyways, that young Matthew Milat, he got 43 years. He won't be out till he's an old man if he lives that long. But unfortunately, David Ochterlony, like all the other victims, they don't have a voice. A little bit about Ivan Milat's background, and it might explain perhaps some of his reasoning, if there is any such thing. He was born to Stefan Milat. Now, Stefan Milat was born in 1902, and I think he died in 1983. And Stefan was a Croatian, was a Croat. Now, you have to kind of think in 1902, when Stefan becomes a teenager or a young man, it's post First World War. First World War ended in 1918. So he would have been 17 years old. Might have been young enough to have been involved in it. I don't know. But that area, Croatia, Serbia, what's that, Kosovo, Macedonia, Bosnia-Herzegovina, all became Yugoslavia. It was part of the settlement post First World War. Because this Archduke Ferdinand was actually murdered in Zagreb in the early part of 1914, and that's what caused the First World War, because of his murder. So all that area was a real hodgepodge of Orthodox, Christian, and Muslims, Kosovans, Muslims. And they were all mixed in together. They created this state called Yugoslavia. It's like a melting pot. You will like each other and you will get on with each other. I mean, they're all Slavic. Their language is all Slavic, so that came from the name Yugoslavia. But unbelievable that they did that. And it took till the Balkan War in the mid-90s for them all come back and have a huge war, which was a vile, messy war, where old scores were settled. The Serbians didn't come out of that particularly well, but a lot of old scores were settled. And it all went back to their nationalities: Bosnian, Herzegovinian, Croatian, Serbian, Kosovo. They all had their own little empires, back as they were, where they could be their individual tribes. And out of that, I think Stefan left in the 1920s when Yugoslavia as a country was born. I think he left. He didn't like what he saw. He probably just, the country was broken and opted for a new life. He went to Australia, where he met Margaret, who's an Australian, and then they started to breed like bloody rabbits. I mean, having 10 sons and 4 girls. Bloody hell. He was starting a football team. But he was a taskmaster. Stefan Milat was a very strict taskmaster. Well, he'd probably well have to be. If you've got 10 sons, you're going to have to keep law and order. You're going to have to keep them occupied. And then in the middle of the bush, they lived not far from Belangolo State Forest. They were well known as a crime family. There was always, the brothers were always getting into trouble. And I wonder if Ivan couldn't shout the loudest, couldn't be seen by his father, was not impressed by his father. And I wonder if this is where it's anger and hatred and rage in the way that he killed people. Very personal to use a knife. When you're shooting someone, it's distant, it's remote. But he used a knife, people he didn't know. It's very, very personal. It's like a rage that needs to be released. And I think that may well be where his rage started. It's interesting that the murders where he was caught, where he was careless, was after 1989. Well, his father died in 1983. I don't know whether he was in prison. He did serve some time in prison, or whether he was committing crime elsewhere. He went to New Zealand for a short while as well. So he could easily have been committing his crime. Somebody who commits a murder, they escalate because they've done almost the worst thing you can do. So if they did a murder once every 6 months, then it escalates to once every 3 months, once every month, maybe once a week. They've got to feed the beast, feeding the beast all the time. And I think he got careless and just couldn't be bothered to take his bodies or his victims elsewhere and dump them in Belangor, practically on your doorstep. And one of the first places that people were suggesting the police might like to look was the Milat brothers, small folk. So the mother was a bit of an old matriarch, Margaret. None of them was scared of her, but they respected her. And I believe that she believed if he said, "Oh, I had nothing to do with this. I never murdered anybody," she'd be all right. Yeah, okay, I believe you, of course. But I have in my mind this image that I have of her at a washing machine, sorting through the laundry, coming across his clothes absolutely covered in blood, and her saying nothing. So I believe she knew exactly what they were. Exactly. And as I say this, he's saying, "How dare you speak about my mother like that?" You know? But I don't take any notice of him. He's got no voice. I'm telling the story as I know. But his father was a different kettle of fish, and he is looking over his shoulder all the time at his father. He's afraid of his father. His father can find him, but I don't think his mother can. I don't think his mother can reach him, but his father can, because he still maintains the ties of fear to his father. I think his mother was pretty shocked at what he did. I think she knew, but I don't think she realized the extent. And she certainly covered up. No. His brothers, he had a brother called Alex, another thick piece of shit. And if Alex wants to take me up on that, he can take me up. He is a thick piece of shit, and I'll tell you why. He gave an interview, and I think it might have been Channel 7 or one of the Australian channels, but he gave an interview. And at the time, this was after they'd caught I, and he described what he saw, the witness statement. And he'd seen this car, and it looked like it was a two-tone Daihatsu type of Giro, something like that. And there were two girls sitting in the back, mouth was taped up, and they looked frightened. And there was a man either side of them. And then there's another man sitting in the front with a gun, and you could just see the top of this gun as this car drove past. Well, Alex must be, brain of New South Wales. He took in a huge amount of information in that short little pieces. This car's going past. He saw all that. He was able to describe the gun that the man had in the front. He described it perfectly. It's a very rare gun. I think it was a Ruger. And he was describing this. I mean, it's amazing the detail that he had. This blood went backwards and forwards to the police who got interested in him. How would you know this? When the police found the gun, it took them a long time to find Ivan's gun. It was a very rare Ruger. Now, how would Alex have seen that, all that detail in a car that's going past probably 30k, 50k, maybe maximum? How would he have seen all that detail, including the fear on the girls' faces, could describe the girls and what they were wearing quite well? So that's the level of stupidity of his family. They all claimed to have no knowledge, nothing to do with us. We never knew anything, but they were all covering up for each other. They all had something to hide. So did Ivan act alone? Could he abduct, kidnap a male and female too at the same time? Could he? Or did he have help? And did he end up being full guard, the chosen one, to spend the rest of the time in prison? It would make him look great. So much of a narcissist to think that he's the greatest at what he's doing. The best people who commit crimes are ones we've never heard of because they've never been caught. So Milat has a lot of work to do on the other side. I kind of envision him in a similar sort of place as Al Capone in darkness. Can't find his way out. But he knows there's people who he is afraid of around him. Can't but get back to where he wants to be. No one will acknowledge or give him the credit that he thinks he deserves. And like I've just explained, he's got no option now. He's stuck. Because in 1996, Martin Bryant was the one that went 5 episodes. They're all of the same in as they're prepared to do the work. And I'm not sitting in judgment, it's not for me to do so. He was judged by what they call 12 good men, 12 peers, men and women. On a jury, he was found wanting and he got sent down. 7 life sentences. Unless he was going to live to 150, he was never getting out. He never explained why he did all these things. But I find it quite abhorrent that he's trying to come to people and try to influence you to make him like the superstar is, because you could see exactly what he was. And he's still trapped in a wheelchair. The last few years of his life in prison, he was in a wheelchair. He's still in the bloody thing. Still frightened of his father. But the people who I am quite willing to give voice to are his victims. And if they want to step forward at any time, I'll go see if I can do little bit, and eventually put a video together. Because they are now in control. They have their connections with their families. They have found peace. They have been granted peace from the trauma that they went through. And this is another thing about trauma. People who go through horrific, traumatic events. I have a feeling, I might be wrong on this, but I have a feeling that the spirit guides, spirit in general, when you're in that situation, someone standing with a knife or a gun, whatever, that your soul is removed. So your soul is not scarred forever for all its incarnations that have yet to come. So effectively, it's like jumping free of a car before it hits that 40-ton truck coming the other way. You can still look back, see yourself. You can see what's happened, what's occurred, and that in itself will be traumatic. But for those that say are tortured by people, that's a different thing, scarring the soul there. And that's very, very different thing. That he has a lot of work to do, and hard as it may be, everybody has a right to redemption. And if he's prepared to do the work, then that doorway may be open for him. But he who shouts the loudest does not get the veil. We still see him as fairly insignificant little man whose only way he could control anybody was to kill. That was the only way he could exert control, because he had got the brain or the wherewithal. I mean, this is a man who seemingly sleeping with his sister. It's pretty low, isn't it? So Milat can just stay where he is till he's prepared to do the work. And I titled this video Milat, the road to perdition. He is there. His residence at the moment is perdition. And that seems like a good place for him. He was always going to head that way. Once you've taken a life, you're always going to head that way. But he's got a lot of work to do. Hopefully he'll never bother knocking on my door again. I've spoken about it. I've told the truth about it. I'm not going to lie about it. You make your own judgment. He's now wiped from this planet. I'm wiped from this. Now I have some notes here, which it will give me the greatest pleasure to bear. Yeah. That cold name, very fitting. Well, with that was quite powerful. We've cleansed the area. Thank you for watching. Don't have bad dreams about people like that. The chances of you bumping into them are so few and far between. And I want to say to you all, sweet dreams, my friends, if you have enjoyed watching the video, please give me a like. There's one just up there. Give me a share. That one there. Or if you feel like it, give me a subscribe. Just hold it. See, got it. Give me a subscribe. Oh, dropped it. Have some fun. Be good. Bye for now.